You're listening to the APSE podcast, the Association of People Supporting Employment First, with your host, Chris Davies. Today's podcast is brought to you by Reach for Resources, a nonprofit providing individualized, competitive employment services for people with disabilities. We believe our community is a better place when it is inclusive and everyone, regardless of ability, has the chance to be successful. Learn more at reachforresources.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Minnesota APSE podcast, episode 6 of season 4. So delighted to have you here and so excited to have our guests with us today. This is a two-part series, episode 1 of a two-part series that we're going to be able to experience with Jeff Smith and Scott Sari. And you're going to learn so much about Jeff and a little bit about Scott along the way, you know, as we take our journey here. But they are both amazing people. We've been getting to know them here in the studio, and Jeff has been performing not only magic, but comedy and meaningful storytelling and writing for 29 years. And I'm so excited that we have him here and that we were able to do a two-part episode with him. Again, this is episode 1, and as I always want to do, before we really get into it, I'd like to tell anybody out there that is watching this podcast for the first time, welcome, and a little bit about APSE, in case you don't know. We are the only national organization that is truly dedicated to integrated competitive employment for all. We believe that employment is indeed the poverty out of isolation and is the pathway out of poverty and isolation. And we believe everybody means everybody. Okay, so before we get any further, we do like to make sure that we give a visual description. I am a white male. I am bald. I have a red beard. Today I'm wearing a blazer that's kind of checkered, little tan blazer with blue jeans. And Jeff.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me.
So great to have you. Would you please describe yourself?
Well, the last time I saw myself, I was looking in a mirror at age 12. So let's see, I'm quite short, lots of pimples, and a baby face. No, actually, people have described me as looking like the identical twin of Brad Pitt. I guess that's why so many say, oh, his brother's name is Stu. I guess that's why so many say, hey, stupid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And
A rim shot, please.
there you go. Very good. And you have a beard. We should have brought a drum for a rim shot. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could probably pipe that in.
I have a beard. I comb my hair back. I'm about 155, 5'6", and I guess that's about it. Kind of bent up, but that's me.
All right,
I like
love
to
it.
describe myself as positively different because that has two statements. One is that I look at my differences, I embrace them, and see them in a good light, glass half full light, because I know what the qualities that they have given me. I'm talking about my disabilities, not my bad jokes, and it's given me expanded perspective. And patience, perseverance, so it's built my character. And the other reason I describe myself as positively different is simply that I always look at the good side of things. It's a great coping mechanism, and it's good team building too, I think, even if it's just one person who you're with.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I subscribe to that as well. And I got to tell you have a really nice head of hair. I'm very jealous. Very Fonzie-like.
Well, Fonzie or fuzzy, because it's kind of thin.
Could be a little bit of both.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it could be a little bit of both. So, Scott, can you please provide a visual description of yourself?
I was thinking when I met Jeff 28 years ago, so you had just started Magic. Mm-hmm. You had brown hair, and it was quite well coiffed. And I think I had blonde hair back then, but I'm a 67-year-old fat grandpa man. I have white hair now. Jeff, you're mix, graying, and your beard is probably the same color mine is. White beards.
Geez, thanks. I kept picturing myself totally different.
The bubble has been burst. Yeah, your beards really do look very similar now that you say that, Scott. So back in the old days, Scott had white hair, or blonde hair, excuse me. Jeff, you had brown hair, and I had hair.
And you had
period.
hair.
Okay. All right. Well, good stuff. Well, let's get into it, shall we? Jeff, we love to have just sort of a little overview, greetings, introductions, as we like to call it. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I would like to say that I don't want to be remiss and miss an important part, a huge part of my life, who is Scott Sorry. He's a married guy, and so am I, but he is important to me because he brings the best out of me, number one, and he laughs at most of my jokes. I think he thinks he's in my will.
Yeah.
Am I on your bad ear side, I hope?
No, I can hear you fine.
Oh, well, whatever. Okay. We have known each other for those many years, and we have traveled. He's such a morale booster. He's taken me all over the country to magic shows. In fact, Scott was a part-time magician himself amidst his successful accounting career. And
can you tell him about my how we met?
Well, when I did a Christian show at his church, he approached me afterward, and I thought, gosh, what a friendly guy. Well, it turns out later he told me I was a threat in his territory, and he wanted to be sure to check out this Gomer. But right away that very year, we went to a convention, a national convention, and I'll talk about some of that later. But I want to say that when we do travel, because Scott has, done magic and been comfortable on stage, we have done tricks together, sort of grand finales. Like, are you, Chris, familiar with what they call the Navage nasal rinse?
Oh, yes, I've tried it. I never could master it.
Okay. Well, anyway, so what we would do, we would both be up there, and I would take a hose from the Navage and stick it up my right nostril, and then squirt saline up there, and then by magic, it would come out of the left nostril of Scott. Now, the audience loved it, especially those who weren't in the first row.
I was going to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
People probably learned to wear a raincoat if they sat in the first row, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're diehard fans?
Yeah.
All right. Well, what else can you tell us about some of the important people in your life?
Yeah. Well, I guess a segue into it, when I got married, what really attracted me to Devin, my wife, is her humor, her wit, her intelligence, and over the last 21 years of our marriage, her assistance, which is only surpassed by her unconditional love. I think I said it the way she wanted me to. But,
beautiful.
We have used humor just as a natural coping mechanism in our lives. Devin has a TBI, traumatic brain injury, which I'll talk about shortly. And so our friends hear us just have this natural, funny repartee together. And one time in the hospital, a nurse said, who overheard us, said, "You two are the healthiest people I have ever met," which was quite a compliment. But a friend, in fact, another friend who has been observing me and Devin too, said, "Jeff, how is it that you and Devin are so content? In view of your history of disability and challenges, it's just not natural." And I said, "Dave, you're right. It's not natural. It's supernatural. I think it's a gift from God." But he wanted, to insist that it was all because of my persistence and humor all was from me alone, despite him saying that it's unnatural, which is what my exact point to him was all about. Yes, it's unnatural.
Can I throw something in? I was just going to say, a lot of your friends call her Mrs. Amazing.
That's
because
right. Yeah.
I've traveled with you, and it's not always easy.
Oh, yeah.
And she lives with you, so she is a saint, and she is amazing.
Yeah, she is. You're right.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it came out yet to our audience, but tell us what your performing name is.
Well, it's Amazing Jeffo. Not to be confused with Amazing Jello, because I'm not that wiggly. Kids, I would say that with my shows I did for little kids, and they would come up to me after the show and say, goodbye, Amazing Jello, and then I would pretend to be all, ticked off, so they would love that.
Very good, very good.
But Devin, I'd like to talk more about Devin. She is such a strong person in my life, and although she admits to otherwise, she compliments me so well because she tells me the things that I need to hear, not the things I want to hear. Mm-hmm. And she also has really taught me so much, been such a positive influence. I had so many years as being a patient or an object of care that, well, yes, I sometimes, took advantage of that, but she nipped that in the bud. And she is... before we met, she was a caregiver to her mother who had her own disability issues. So Devin told me that she always thought that frailty does not mean inferiority. And a little voice in my mind reminds me of that because, I had so many decades of self-doubt in my life, starting early on with all the sudden, unexpected hospitalizations I had. And right away, I felt like a normal kid trapped in a body that didn't work, but all the time away from home and school, I guess, eroded my confidence and my sense of control over my life. And so I thought, I don't know, I was like 5 years old, so this was unconscious. But I wanted to connect, find a way to connect with people, and as well as, bolster myself. And so I came across humor, and I had to be imaginative about how I handled that, because my speech was so disfluent. I had so much stress, I guess, and unexpected serious disabilities that cropped up. I just became so nervous, although I never showed it. And later my mom was saying, when I was an adult, about, oh yeah, Jeff's always been so calm. And I said, are you kidding? Because I guess...
No one said that about me when I was young, Jeff.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff, talking about young, you've got, you're talking about how humor is a great way to connect with people.
Yeah.
But you started that pretty young.
You're right. In the hospital, all these, strange people, 5 years old, all the nurses and the doctors and the technicians. Well, I was in the hospital at age 5 with a number of issues that we'll talk about in a little bit. But, I thought, how can I connect with people here? How can I... and I hated naps. Man, I despise naps. And
I can relate with that, Jeff.
Yeah, it just it messes up my nighttime sleep. Plus, it's like I'll miss something. I just don't like to miss something. I think it's a reaction to having no control over my life, or very little control over my life. But so I was in the hospital, and this was, back in 62, when this new national phenomenon called James Bond emerged. Bond's the name, James Bond. Stir, not shake. Or was it?
Was that Sean Connery?
Yeah,
was that Sean Connery, the first
Shake,
007? Oh,
shake,
yeah.
Not stir. Yeah, there. Shake, not stir. Yeah, that's how he talks.
So at 5.
So then I thought, how can I use a little humor to connect with these nurses? Because I am so damn scared.
Yeah.
So at nap time, I peeked out my hospital room door, and a la James Bond, I ducked and dodged my way down, ducking behind laundry carts to the nurse's station, where I bided my time and waited just for the right moment to dash in the opening to the nurse's station, which had a high desk, and I scampered underneath the long charting table that nurses used to sit at, and pulled charts from an open channel, down the length of it. So I scampered under there, and I had to be really careful not to bump knees, and and I just sat there and waited for just enough charts to be, pulled out, that have an opening large enough that I stood up and gave everyone a big old hi. And I was thrilled to hear all their shrieks. And, Jeff, it's nap time. Okay, whatever. But I had them kind of wrapped around my finger.
Oh, sure.
I could.
Sure.
They were letting me shoot my booties up the vacuum tube message
Oh boy.
to the next floor, and then they get a call. What are these booties all about? And they thought it was funny, and so I really brought a lot of cheer to them. And I would do. Oh man, I just was a rascal. I hid at nap time in the playroom in the cupboard, which had sliding doors, and there was a big panic. Where's Jeff? You know, how are we going to say to the Smiths, oh, don't worry, we lose them all the time. You know, I mean, that's not going to work.
Sure.
So,
Well,
anyway, so
yeah.
that was the start, I guess, of how I would use humor, and people enjoyed it. So I thought, hey, and that would help people focus on me as a real person, and not dwell on, that I'm some poor schlump with arthritis and later blindness and
And the colitis.
yeah, right. Colitis, ulcerative colitis, and then stuttering. Yeah. But in fact, I liken my life in lots of ways. When I first saw Pinocchio,
Okay.
I could really relate to that, and it's still one of my favorite movies because, like Pinocchio, who was supported physically by Geppetto, the puppet master, with the strings. Other people in my life were also pulling my strings, but I wanted to be thought of as a real boy, and just a regular boy, and like Pinocchio was guided by Jiminy Cricket. I guess I realized this years later, I was guided by probably three main influences. One is, of course, self-directed humor. Also, I unconsciously or consciously surrounded myself with encouraging people. And then I would use my wild imagination as a problem-solving tool, so as to not give up and throw in the towel.
Sure. Well, it sounds like you had amazing instincts as a young person, of how to connect, and it's from, I don't know you your whole life, but from what I know about you, it sounds like that really laid sort of the foundation for your life's work, which is to connect with people, make them laugh, cheer them up, and humor puts everybody at ease. When I met you right away today, you had a couple cracks for me, and I immediately felt comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. It's a wonderful thing. And Devin, she right away saw my methods, and I lift her through my humor. I'm always making comments about this or that, like on TV it was a commercial for a restaurant that said dog friendly. So I said, what does that mean? Does the maitre d' lick your face? Because, I see things kind of different, a little bit like George Carlin used to.
Yeah. That is very George Carlin-like.
Yeah, but after several years of marriage, Devin said, Jeff, you are like the irritant in the oyster shell of my life. I think she was joking. That somehow produces pearls, and like the the irritant piece that produces pearls, I hearken back to Pinocchio. He and I realized our dreams of becoming a real boy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned George Carlin, which is a classic comedian. And, and speaking of classic bits, didn't you develop a top 10 list or a 10 list?
Yes, well, I do. I have this top 10 benefits of being blind, and I wrote that for a national conference that I went to of Christian magicians, and it was a big audience. It was very exciting, a huge stage with all professional kinds of equipment and several curtains, But anyway, and I use this list. It's in all my books. I have different lists, and it's just to show people that trials in themselves are not funny, but humor is a way to lessen their impact, and to put the issue in perspective, having it no bigger, no larger than it really is. So so I brought from my first book.
I remember these at Magic shows too.
Yeah, well,
you put these up on the screen.
Yes, Scott recorded some of them, and we added sound effects and everything. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so maybe Scott could read them, and Chris, you just react naturally, and I'm used to...
Or enjoy them.
Enjoy the ride.
Or enjoy them.
I'll sit back and enjoy the ride. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeff O. Smith's top 10 benefits of being blind. Number 10. I was voted most popular snack table monitor at the Weight Watchers convention.
Okay, laugh now.
Okay. Number 9. I'm way less likely to be blamed for leaving the bathroom light on.
That's true. Don't fake it.
Okay, number 8. I'm a popular house guest since the hostesses don't have to tidy up first.
Yeah, see, Chris, I think, hasn't had his second cup of coffee yet today, so he's a little sleepy, not as reactive.
Well, honestly, I can remember, when you came over to the house, we didn't worry about cleaning up, or when I came to your house,
right? I
didn't worry about washing my hair or whatever.
Right. Except you forgot that I have a sniffer.
That's right. Okay, number 7. Yeah. I can parallel park as well as any average American.
Oh, I think I get it, Chris. You're just waiting, kind of to until the end to let out all the laughter. Okay.
Number 6.
I'm laughing over here.
Number 6. I save big money on bed sheets by not needing to cut eye holes for my Halloween costume.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Are you wearing earphones or earplugs, Chris?
Number 5. Yeah. I'm thrilled to take medications that cause blurry vision.
Yeah. Okay, no.
All right.
That was sincere.
Number 4. I can hold the tape dispenser for you while you wrap my birthday present.
There you go.
Yeah. Is that Scott, start the car.
Okay. Every outing with my wife promises to be the thrill and excitement of a blind date.
Yeah.
And the number 2 benefit of being blind, still using original flashlight batteries 25 years later.
Uh-huh.
And the big one, number 1, I've never had to answer that most dangerous of all questions. Honey, does this outfit make me look fat?
Oh, yeah. I know that one.
Da, 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 da.
That's a great list. Thank you.
Well, thank
you both for sharing.
There's plenty more where they came from.
Oh, yeah. And I can't wait. So speaking of humor, you have used humor in your marriage as well. Isn't that right, Jeff?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, we both have that same attitude, and humor has been something that is an effective tool that we use in public to, I guess, educate people. We've been at restaurants where it's not untypical for the server to look at me and then look at Devin and say, what does he want? Mm-hmm. So, which is an awkward thing and reflects how uncomfortable they feel. Well, that's understandable. And so I just interject something like, well, I could ask him and get back to you if that's okay. And then she'll laugh or he'll laugh and he'll see the erroneous thought of my the incorrect thought of my degree of capability. Mm-hmm. And then that breaks down. So humor really breaks down communication barriers.
Sure. It's very disarming.
Yes, right. Mm-hmm. Right, which works good for magic too, because part of being a magician is misguiding, misdirection, what's the other word? Mm-hmm. What's the other word, Scott, that we use? But so I'll use humor, and they're laughing, and then I do the secret move.
Yes. Yeah. While their head is like literally in their knees with laughter.
Right. Yeah.
That's a great technique. I like that. Mm-hmm. And you've stated that Devin has had quite an influence on you as well. Tell us about that.
Well, she has. Like I mentioned before, she came into our marriage. We both were rather old, and there's a statistic that was stated many years ago that for a woman, and I suppose it'd be for a guy too, if you're not married by 35 years old, you have a better chance to be a victim of terrorism.
Okay.
But so, well, they actually published that. Okay.
Oh boy.
So, we were both exactly at the same point in our, I guess our
close in age,
our own comfort level, and level of acceptance, and we, the very week that we met, we both had said a prayer to God, kind of like, okay, God, whatever, I don't want to, keep being disappointed. I'd like to marry, but obviously I'm 47, and Devin at the time was 39. So I'll just give it up to you. And so I surrendered it in his hands, and which kind of ties in to something earlier. By doing that, by giving, God, handing over the steering wheel to God, it helped me to better focus on, well, okay, what's my next step here, just to not mess up my present life. And rather than trying to figure the whole plan of my life out, which I was doing, but, it wasn't. So then, because I think God has a sense of humor, he introduced us. Devin was, am I jumping too far ahead?
No, I think
it's a good spot.
You're right on the money.
About how we met?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she was for many years a manager of a school-age child care program in North St. Paul. And one of her staff, she oversaw 70 people and did budgets, and it was like a high-power position, wrote curriculum, etc. That staff person was now on maternity leave.
Okay.
And Devin, last minute, got the memo, blind magician coming, you'll have to host him. And Devin was rather, peeved because she had a lot of work to do. And she told me later, I said to my secretary, who the hell ever heard of a blind magician anyway? And so, little did she know that my charms were soon to...
yes.
She said it was my hair, harkening back. And that's why Devin's
She must
so...
have been a fan of Happy Days as well.
Yeah, well, she has, she maintains my good hair. I mean, if those other things weren't enough, the hair certainly is. Yes, yes. So, and the bottom lip.
The bottom lip.
What do you think, Chris? No, I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable.
You want me to talk about your bottom lip?
No.
Do you pout? Is that what you're saying?
No,
I'd be happy to.
It's succulent. Okay.
Yeah, it looks lovely.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is a family show,
Yeah,
so
it's a family show.
yeah, okay. So anyway,
Dysfunctional family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. So, I went there and immediately was so impressed with her what I thought was serenity, but she's a great faker, and so we had time to talk before we could set up, and she, got me a Coke, and then afterward we talked, and she had these matchmaking colleagues who knew that Devin wanted to meet someone. Do you mind if I just take a little slug?
Not at all.
Okay, Scott, slug me. Just a minute here.
Little slug while you're drinking the Gatorade.
There you go.
Yeah, and then I'll spill.
Well, while you're drinking that, the way you and Devin met is reminding me of a movie. It's really a story for the storybooks.
Yeah. What's it called?
I don't know. It's some kind of movie. It might be a movie yet to be made.
Okay. I
don't
see.
know, but there's something about your story that's just really resonating with me.
Yeah.
Okay, I just had to scooch up because
there
I
you
deal
go.
with a fused
Scooch and slug.
left knee.
That's how we do it.
And so anyway, after the show, I palmed, which is a magic term, a business card and shook Devin's hand and said, thank you very much for your help. Would you ever be interested in going out sometime for coffee? I didn't drink coffee at the time, but I had seen that movie Christmas Story where that little kid says, yeah, just ask her out for coffee. That's that's what adults say. And
That's beautiful.
And that was met by silence. So then I said, or, we could do lunch. I'd like to treat you to lunch. Silence. And then I thought, gosh, she's really, how about we maybe go out for dinner sometime? And then she did grumble, well, yes, maybe. And so 3 days later, she called me. And she was all nervous. I saved the first 3 calls that she made on my old voicemail, And the first one was like stuttery. And, yeah, this is Devin Smith. And then the second one is, hi there, blah, blah. And then the third intro on the voicemail I saved was, hello. So just to show
Did
her.
it take 3 calls for you to call her back?
No. This is over the course of time.
Okay.
And so I wanted to.
I see. The first 3 voicemails she left you.
Yes.
Not all in a row. Gotcha.
No, right.
Gotcha.
So I just saved them. And
See, you saw how comfortable she got over the voicemails.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
and just
during the time. I
to
love
tease her.
Well, that's interesting.
The St. Paul paper and did a big spread on us about how this unusual situation. And there's lots of more details in there, like when I said to her, because I was able to feel her hand and know that there was no ring there. So I said,
yes.
so why isn't such a nice, attractive person like you married? I just like to throw it out there, break the ice.
There you go.
And she says, well, I'm married to my career. Just kind of a defensive answer, but that's okay. She's a real pro. So, and then 6 months later, I gave her a ring that she assumed was a gag ring. And I said, if you knew how much this cost me, you would know that it made me gag.
Oh, good.
So then we married 6 months after that. So it was like a year, basically.
I absolutely love that story.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. So I have to ask you, do you still have the recordings of those voicemails?
No, she made me, she was embarrassed.
Okay.
So
you didn't transfer them to digital or something like that? You didn't take them to a Astound video or anything?
No, that was my whole point, though, to have a little weapon at hand. No. But it made its effect, and then I was able to think since then of many other ways I could tease her.
Wow.
So I didn't need to save them.
Well, that is such a great story, and I think as the audience can tell in this first episode, we're getting to know you. We're learning more about your personal story, your growing up, how you met Devin. I know you wanted to talk just briefly about a little of your medical history. Would you like to give us a sort of, a thumbnail of your medical history?
And now we're going to cut to a chapter in Jeff's autobiography, Seeing Light in the Darkness, detailing his health struggles early in life. The podcast will resume when the chapter in the audiobook concludes.
Chapter 3. What now? Or, now what? Test results and information about my condition were being shared between doctors in the Twin Cities and the Mayo Clinic. With my colitis symptoms worsening, it was back to St. Joseph's Hospital and another round of tests and treatments. After days of inconclusive tests and ineffective treatments, all the while experiencing uncontrollable diarrhea and being fed intravenously, doctors decided that there was no other option than more exploratory surgery. They successfully removed a length of diseased intestine. All of these negative circumstances gave me a sense of uncertainty. Strangely, however, instead of these events totally overwhelming me, they actually provided me an opportunity to take back a degree of control through humor. Around this time, I had started seeing things on TV talking about a spy named James Bond. My parents explained to me what a spy does. Cool, I thought. During one of my Mayo Clinic visits, my dad and I stopped at a newspaper kiosk that had paperback books. I saw that one of the books had a picture of James Bond on the cover, standing next to a provocatively dressed woman. The woman, of course, held no interest to someone 6 years old, but the determined look on James Bond's face and the gun he toted really grabbed my curiosity. "Dad, can I get this book?" I could hardly read, but I thought maybe I could find someone to read it to me. He picked up the book, saw the easy-looking woman, and said, I don't think so." But I didn't need a James Bond book to assume the role of a secret agent. While doctors were preparing for my latest exploratory surgery, one of my greatest accomplishments of stealth to date was breaching the security of the nurses' station during what was supposed to be nap time. I carefully poked my head out of the hospital room and looked furtively left and right. Crawling down the hall, I waited for just the right moment. Then, when no one was looking, I scampered under the long nurses' charting table, unbeknownst to anyone. As one of the nurses removed a chart from the opening in the center of the table, there was room for me to pop my head up and say, "Hi!" She shrieked, and the metal chart clattered to the floor. The rest of the nurses laughed. The head nurse said, smiling, "Very funny. This is nap time. Back to your room." I always seemed to be able to make the staff smile. This, in return, made me smile, which I know boosted my spirits. One of the things that wiped that smile off my face was hospital Jell-O. It was standard fare for hospital meals as much as silverware and napkins. Since familiarity breeds contempt, I did not eat Jell-O again for 20 years. They always served it in a bowl of 1-inch cubes that were harder than Jell-O has a right to be. It wouldn't have been so bad if they'd allowed me to use it as part of a craft project, but instead they expected me to eat it. I wondered just how resilient these cubes were. To test this, I threw one at the wall. It didn't bounce back to me as I had hoped, but lay intact on the floor. "What is this Jell-O doing over here?" the nurse noticed as she was clearing my dishes. It must have fallen off my spoon," I said. For as much as I despised Jell-O as a kid, ironically, today I sometimes incorporate it into my preschool magic show. "Good morning, boys and girls. I am Amazing Jeffo, not to be confused with Amazing Jell-O, because I'm not that wiggly." This line always gets a lot of giggles from the kids, since silliness is their preferred form of humor. While I'm packing up after the show as the kids are leaving the auditorium, they call out, "Goodbye, Amazing Jell-O." I pretend to be annoyed as they giggle all the more. I came around full circle with Jell-O when I was about 30 years old. At the annual Christmas dinner my parents routinely hosted, my mom served a festive holiday salad. "Mom, this is delicious. What's all in here?" I asked with a mouth full of Jell-O. "Basically, it's Jell-O with strawberries, wine, and whipped cream." I was converted. I am now a recovering Jell-oholic, at least around Christmas. Jell-O aside, while I was in the hospital, doctors removed more diseased intestines. The surgery initially gave my worn-out intestinal tract a break, enough of a break that it fooled the junior partner filling in for Dr. Flanagan, who was out of town. "Jeff, what would you think about me sending you home today?" I guess I'd like that," I answered with uncertainty because I still didn't feel right. The next morning, my parents received a call from Dr. Flanagan. "I'm very sorry, Mrs. Smith. There's been a terrible mistake. Jeffrey should have never been discharged so soon. He needs to be readmitted." I was having lunch while watching my favorite kids show, Lunch with Casey, when Mom broke the news. "I'm so sorry, Jeffrey. Dr. Flanagan says we need to bring you back to the hospital for more tests." After being discharged a second time, it wasn't more than a week or so later that my symptoms returned in full force. Between the hospital stay and recovery at home, I was gone from kindergarten for about 6 weeks. The Twin Cities doctors were perplexed. They didn't know why the attacks on my GI tract were continuing, but figured they had to have missed something. Even more exploratory surgery was recommended. But this time, doctors agreed that I needed to be admitted to St. Mary's, the largest private hospital in the world at that time. It was founded by the Franciscan Sisters in 1889 as a response to a tornado that ravaged the greater Rochester area. Ever since, it has had a working relationship with the Mayo Clinic, which was founded in 1883. My parents decided, rather than commuting daily between St. Paul and Rochester, approximately 90 miles, my dad would set up my mom at the Kaler Hotel in Rochester, a short walk from St. Mary's. They also arranged for my paternal grandmother to move into our home and assist my dad with my siblings, enabling him to continue his business. We were introduced to Dr. Hugh B. Lynn, the chief of St. Mary's Pediatric Surgery Department. Lynn headed up a team of staff and visiting surgeons, both national and international. Usually following a day of tests, my mom would meet with this group to go over results and discuss options. At one of these meetings, a Swedish doctor stood up and boldly addressed the group. In Sweden, we have different attitudes and approaches than the doctors from your country. Here in this country, your doctors prefer a conservative approach. In Sweden, we understand the conservative approach, but in your son's situation, this is only going to delay the inevitable. His colitis is wearing down his body, and I believe an aggressive approach to this disease must be taken as soon as possible. Otherwise, his disease will eventually kill him, he said in his thick accent. Alarmed, my mother asked, Doctor, what could or would be done for Jeffrey if he were in Sweden? We would go ahead and perform an ileostomy. We don't understand, Doctor, my dad broke in. What's an ileostomy? An ileostomy is a surgical procedure that removes the bowel, large colon, and intestines to the area of the ileum, high up in the GI tract, he said. This opinion obviously put my parents in a quandary. They had been comfortable and trusting of the expert medical opinion of doctors in the Twin Cities, yet they wanted me to have the best chance of survival. They took the middle ground by giving permission to continue current treatment and hoped that tests would eventually lead us to a solution with which they and I would feel comfortable. This approach was problematic because of the lack of comparative cases of other children my age with my degree of colitis. Also, without the diagnostic tools common today, such as MRIs and CTs, definitive diagnosis was more reliant on educated guesses and deductive reasoning to determine treatment. Eventually, doctors decided on a plan of action. They called my parents and announced, We believe the best approach at this point for successful results for Jeffrey's condition can only be accomplished by performing a colectomy. A colectomy involves removing the colon, a procedure best done by a surgeon while asleep. Meaning I'd be asleep, not the surgeon. Gratefully, I was too young to understand all the details or risks of my condition and relied on the reassurances of my parents and the comforting smiles of the staff for solace. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. Remember, men need laughter, sometimes more than food. Anna Fellows Johnston.
Okay,
They are?
where's that? Okay, yeah, those organizations that have to do with ulcerative colitis,
Okay.
rheumatoid arthritis.
Right.
We started this nice, rhyming pattern, but then we went to stuttering. It was interrupted by stuttering, but that's the nature of stuttering. It's interrupted.
Yeah.
And
then
blindness, yeah. So it started when I was age 5. I suddenly was discharging just whole blood in the toilet, and so the doctors were scratching their heads because they assumed, cancer, because 5-year-old boys don't get ulcerative colitis. That's an older. So they ultimately had to do, I was losing weight, and they had to do a exploratory, and then they discovered a diverticulitis, which is like inflamed or infected pouch in your colon, yeah.
This was all at 5 years old.
Yeah,
That
5,
must have
6,
been,
yeah.
That must have been a lot to
take
in. And that's when you were in the hospital, right? And you would surprise the nurses and hide and all that? Yeah, gotcha.
Because they had to build me up with transfusions first. Oh, and I hated those things, transfusions. It looked like a praying mantis to me with that long needle. Yeah. But anyway, And then I had another exploratory, and they gave me a colectomy, which is just cutting out diseased lengths of colon. And then finally, we were under care at Mayo Clinic, St. Mary's Hospital.
Oh, sure.
And at that time, they had some Swedish doctors on my case, and they were recommending what here in the U.S. was considered an experimental surgery, an ileostomy. That's where they cut out your bowel, your large colon, and most of your intestines, and they reroute the end point from your backside to your front into a pouch. Mm-hmm. And Mayo said that I was the second youngest person to ever have an ileostomy.
Wow.
And they said to my parents at the time this was irreversible, and they told them to sleep on it, but they really had no choice, because by then I was almost 8 years old and I weighed 28 pounds.
Wow!
So I was right on the cusp. I remember being in this hospital during the gap shot, or what do you call that? The little temporary gap remedies.
Triage?
No, it's where you just a quick fix. What do you call that? A gap?
Band-Aid? I don't know.
Yeah, a Band-Aid. Mm-hmm. And where they had taken out some colon, but I had this infection in me, and I was fading. And I remember one day my mom was at my bedside, and it was a quiet room. Nothing was going TV-wise. She said, "What are you thinking about?" Well, I'm trying to... Well, at first I just wouldn't answer her. And then I said, I'm trying to imagine what God looks like. Well, she freaked out on that. Mm-hmm. "Excuse me, Jeff, I'll be right back." Yeah. So then shortly after that, they said, yeah, we have no choice. We're going in there. So they cleaned out the infection, and they put an ileostomy on me, which is kind of weird, because then I would go to these support groups where the average age was about, 60.
Sure,
and,
I would imagine.
And then there I was, and they would try to make it fun. Yes, we have prizes tonight. Oh, good, I'll get something out of this. We have ileostomy belts. We have ileostomy deodorizers. What kind of crock is this?
A whole line.
Yeah.
And you also developed rheumatoid arthritis for young.
Well,
after
sure.
Was it after that life-saving kind of procedure then?
Yeah, and that really wasn't the end to my ileostomy. I'll quickly add, I had a lot of post-surgical incidents where scar tissue was strangling my colon, and I was all puffed up, and I had an incision open up overnight, and I bled so much I went into shock. Mm-hmm. And so I was in the hospital several times right at Christmas, because to make the bigger impact, being a performer as God had
you needed to disrupt
intended.
Christmas.
I needed to what?
Disrupt Christmas?
Well, yeah, because then it all focuses on me. Yeah. My mom that night and Dad had stayed up with me all night when I was bleeding, and kind of just, I couldn't hardly sit up because I kept blacking out, And she had prepared a big brunch for extended family, and then my sister, helped finish up, and then my mom came dragging home right about brunch time, and my one of my elderly aunts who, wasn't always in the same reality as everyone else said, "Oh, Martha, your eyes glitter like diamonds." And then her sister, the practical one, "Oh, Rose, those aren't diamonds. That's exhaustion from Martha being up with Jeffrey all night." So then arthritis set in about age 6, where my right knee just swelled up the size of a grapefruit. And when you're 6 years old, that's big.
Yeah.
And my left finger, too, I'll show it. And those are the only 2 places. My left finger, strangely, went into remission many years later, and I have no arthritis in this finger. It's deformed, but the pain is the big thing.
Sure.
So I have it everywhere else, but so they started casting me, putting casts on to forcibly straighten the knee under sedation.
Sure, yeah, they probably didn't know as much about rheumatoid arthritis.
Exactly.
Jeez,
I went to physical therapy every 3 days a week and missed the first half of the school day. And, so my dad would drop me off at the hospital. And I was just, a little kid. But it taught me to grow up fast. And in therapy, they put these heavy bags on my heels and lay me flat. So I just got this evil impression of the PT lady who we saw, who was the bingo caller at church, I noticed one night. And I said, "Oh, that's her. That's her, Satan's helper." I mean, I didn't say that, but I said, "Oh, that's her, that evil lady. She's not. She's a very nice lady." And my mom never let me get by with things. We all had purple fingerprints just above our elbows because she'd take our arm and with a smile. Yeah. No, you don't say that in public.
That was your signal.
Yeah. And we caught on, but my baby brother, he'd say, "Hey, quit squeezing my arm so hard." Anyway, but he was different because he was the baby.
How about a little bit about the stuttering?
Well, but then I went into traction, body traction for 3 months, which I kept losing blood, and I was annoyed because it really limited my pranks on nurses. Yeah. The only thing practically I could do is ask them to sign my cast, and while doing that, I pickpocketed them and put all the goods in my drawer. Yeah. So they routinely would come in and collect their scissors and their pens and leave. So then when I came home, I was so happy after 3 months, right? Well, the next day I went to Mayo Clinic to get an ileostomy because, like I said, I was 28 pounds. And so, but it saved my life,
The strange thing about the arthritis is that's what got to your eyes, right?
Yes, right. The arthritis spread into my eyes around, that was a little later, maybe age 10. And the experts, ophthalmologists said, "Jeff, there's only a 1 in 100,000 chance that it'll spread into your good eye." Well, I wasn't very smart because I should have placed a bet on that long shot. I would have been. I could have retired at age 9. Well, maybe 10.
Okay.
And then,
You're not kidding, though.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's like, well, I am different.
Those are odds.
And this is just an example of why I'm different, why I'm positively different.
Sure. Yep. Sure. Yep.
And
how it affected you.
Yeah, and then stuttering kicked in it's not a physical, disorder. It's they don't really know, but I know part of it is a lack of confidence. I mean, because we all stutter.
Sure.
To some degree. And, when you're stressed out or like when you're asking for a raise, you're not the most comfortable, et cetera, or when you're kowtowing, admitting some mess up to your wife, See, that's how Devin knows that
Been there, done that.
Yeah, that's how she knows I'm lying, because I stutter.
Yeah, it's a tip-off.
And then
that makes sense.
I'm not lying.
Yeah.
So, it's so, in my case, it was just from the isolation I had from family and schoolmates that just made me feel like that object of care, having no control of my life, and therefore a great lack of confidence. I always, what's the word when you overanalyze things? Instead of just saying something, I would think, I wonder how I'm coming across. Well, and that caused more stress when I would stutter, and then the fear of stuttering led to just silence, because it was snowballing. Stuttering would cause more stress, and etc.
It's like a dog chasing its tail; it goes round.
Yeah,
and round.
yeah.
Well, it sounds like the things you faced, that you've described, really had a lot to do with building you into the person you are, one that is resilient and interjects humor, to not only make your life better, but to bestow that upon others. So I really appreciate you running through all that. We're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsor. We'll be right back.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Reach for Resources, a nonprofit providing individualized, competitive employment services for people with disabilities. We believe our community is a better place when it is inclusive and everyone, regardless of ability, has the chance to be successful. Learn more at reachforresources.org.
Okay, we are back from break with our second part of our two-part series here with Jeff Smith and of course Scott Sari. So, Jeff, as we were starting to close out the first part of that of our episode, there you were talking about stuttering, and I know there were some other points that you want to talk to us about before you let us know about your thoughts about.
Well, that was my very most impacting disability, because my mind wasn't disabled, but yet I had no means to share what I had in my mind, and including the ever important humor. So that built up a lot of frustration and resentment. People in school, until they got to know me one-on-one, said, geez, I always thought of you as really shy and quiet. But I was so tongue-tied that I would often sprain my tongue trying to speak. That's a joke. But, actually, the Cub Scouts once gave me a merit badge for tying my tongue in a knot.
Was it a square knot?
Yeah. And my dad, there's a great family story that I heard after the fact that one day when I was in speech therapy once I got to the university, which you'll hear about later, he said, "Where's Jeff?" And my mom said, "He's at stuttering class." And my dad said, "He doesn't need stuttering class. He stutters just fine."
Mm-hmm. But bump.
Yeah. So, but it did get me down. I mean, that was like I said, the greatest disabling thing. And from that, more than anything else, made me blue, gave me the blues. So, do you mind if I reflect that with my harmonica?
Absolutely. We'd love to hear you.
Here's some blues.
There you go. That's good.
Very nice.
And you'll hear about later how harmonica played a big part in the solution to my stuttering.
Well, we can't wait. We can't wait for that. And that was some really nice blues there. I tell you, I felt like I was getting ready to get in a jam session.
I learned harmonica very slowly. The first year, I just held it out the car window.
And how'd that work out for you?
Well, you'll hear more harmonica stories later, but it was,
Okay. I love it. Well,
filled with holes. That joke.
Filled with holes. Very good. Very good. I love it. Good stuff, Jeff. So we'll look forward to that. But now I'd like to ask you to tell us about, the thoughts you had when you were young. And what were some of your first thoughts about a future vocation for yourself?
Yeah. Well, a lot of my comments today are reflections based in a retrospective way of my life, because I was too, I guess dense or single-minded or just dealing with every challenge at the time, what's the next step and all, that I didn't really know the big picture, which is okay because no one wants to know the big picture, like, when they will die. You don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just like God do that. So my path to ultimate employment started in a totally circuitous, indirect way. I remember I was about 7 years old in the garage, because my mom would say, just go out in the garage for a while, but don't blow up the house, okay? And so I went out there, and there's a pile of old magazines, and I read a story, as much as I could read at 7-ish, about a little blind boy in India who was a magician. And I remember thinking, just what Devin echoed later, how can you do magic if you're blind? Well, that obviously was foreshadowing. When I was about 10 years old, I watched that classic Tony Curtis, Janet Leigh movie where he plays the great Houdini. Oh man, that I thought, this guy is powerful. This guy, they love and adore him. Maybe magic would somehow make me feel better about myself. So the next day I bought a book. I went to the elementary school library and checked a biography. That was my first book that I read from cover to cover. That was like a couple hundred pages or more. So I became obsessed with I wanted to do everything like Houdini did, but my parents refused to put me in a straitjacket, dangle me upside down off of a bridge. Though I think a time or two it crossed their mind. So that was, kind of what put that spirit in me. I bought tricks through the mail and played with them, and I liked the gimmickiness of them, and I'd show them to my family, but that's as far as my courage would extend.
Your dad had different ideas, though, right?
Well, I knew one thing for sure, that I could not make it, and my role as a junior sales executive for the National Youth Sales Club, which I saw in the back of a Boy's Life magazine, where I found my trick catalogs. So I ordered this sales kit, and my dad thought it'd be a really good step for me, even in view of my speech, to, try this out, make a few bucks. So I was 12, and I sold a bunch one night to at a family party and made like $12, and I thought, oh man, I'm rich, this is my future. But I went up to walked up to a large townhouse complex, and my dad had helped me write the pitch and honed it. And so let me tell you what, I still remember it, like, 55 years later.
Yeah, sure.
It's, good afternoon. I'm Jeffrey Smith, and I am a representative of the National Youth Sales Club. We sell decorative and personalized stationery. Would you care to look at my samples? And, hardly after the stuttering through the second sentence, they never got to hear the rest of my snazzy pitch that how it sounds today.
Right.
Because, they just said, oh, sorry, I'm not interested. So, yeah, so that was just a childhood fantasy.
So
That's fun, though.
Oh, yeah.
You were telling me 8th grade was kind of a pivotal or a significant
Yes,
year
it
for you?
was, yeah.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, having gone totally blind by the end of 7th grade, I could no longer stay in the public school system, and was transferred to a school called Lindsay that had been around for 100 years, and it was a school for what they called at the time handicapped children. That was the terminology. And I was very mocking of the whole thing. The school itself, I said, yes, this seems like a handicapped school. Everything is falling apart. But I had a revelation, because up until then, even though I had many obvious physical handicaps or disabilities, I always thought of myself as just a regular guy trapped in a funky body. Mm-hmm. Well, these kids had that same attitude, and my bias against, people with with disabilities went away because it gave me that bigger vision of what's important. So my grades improved with that. These were smaller class sizes, which helped. But I think in general, I just received so much self-confidence there because I never thought of myself as disabled when I was in the hallowed halls of Lindsay School. Although we all made fun of the school. The principal thought it would be really cute to teach all the grades the Lindsay fight song.
Oh, yeah.
Do you mind if I...
Oh, boy. I would be disappointed if you didn't.
Okay, here we go. A marching band drum corps would be really nice if that wasn't too much trouble.
Okay, well, maybe our producer will give us a little percussion back there.
Okay. We welcome you to Lindsay School. We're mighty glad you're here. We'll fill the air reverberating with our mighty cheer. We'll sing you in, we'll sing you out. Listen to our mighty shout. Hail, hail, the gang's all here. We welcome you to Lindsay School. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, anyway.
How about you, Scott?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get them. Fight, fight, fight. Okay. So now at this time, it was when I finished 8th grade, it was a very significant year because it coincided with what they call mainstreaming, which I'm sure you know about.
Of course. Yeah.
So they moved me back into 9th grade and set me up in an office because it was an overbuilt school because I'm a baby boomer, right?
Sure.
So with a vision teacher who are supplied from the school district, and they teach Braille and abacus and keyboarding, which I started learning at Lindsay. And my teacher, Mrs. Betsy Mertz, she was tough on me. She looked great, though, because kids would come in between classes and see her. Jeff, she is a babe. I said, it doesn't matter. She's a jerk. And because she, knew I had potential, and she wanted, much like Scott. Scott just automatically brings the best out of me, but she's very much like Devin. Sure. She told me what I needed to hear, and then she and my mom conspired and announced to me, oh yeah, this summer Betsy's going to come to our house and teach you Braille 3 times a week. My precious summer.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of dignity, though, isn't there, in High Expectations?
There's a lot of what?
Dignity.
Well, yeah, but you don't see it in
Right. Not when you're in 9th grade.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So, and one of my ways, naturally, of wanting to fit in with because of peer pressure, in high school, was to do my pranks, and my pranks didn't require fluid speech, so I do crazy things like I call the nurse on my office phone, where I met with Betsy to do testing and whatnot. Sure. And I said to the nurse, I brought a friend with me who's staying at our house. He's a Swedish exchange student. And would you like to talk to him? And, unknowing she said, well, sure, yeah, put them on. So I had a tape recorder, a big reel-to-reel that I record, that my books were on and my study notes. Well, it had 4 tracks. So by playing it on the backward track, it sounded like a Swedish guy. You know, what? Yeah. So I said, I said, he's working on his, but she's, oh, brother. And then I would unscrew, I was, the first year back, I guess the first year and a half, I was in a wheelchair because they hadn't hired a new orientation to mobility teacher to teach me the White Cane, right?
Yeah.
So I would be wheeled from class to class, but, that, was kind of a stigma in my mind still, being in a wheelchair. So I would, I gradually, during lecture time would, I suppose part of it to pass time, unscrew parts of the wheelchair, like unscrew all but one screw for like the rims.
Oh, yes.
Or like the main axle, the sides, so that it turned into a clown car. So when I was being pushed down the hall, the wheels would go way out and way in.
Oh, sure.
And then the rims would shoot forward and then back and then up and down and forward. And then the metal sides would rattle. And one day when we're zooming down the hall, I pushed out a side, and destructive jerk I was, and the spokes went flying.
Oh, boy.
So then but that added another, Harley Davidson kind of sound as they clattered against the axle. And then eventually one day a friend was pushing me, and the wheel went ahead of us totally, and he's supporting me on 3 wheels. And we went to the nurse's office. I think there's something wrong with this chair.
I wonder what that could be.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, so that's how I got attention in high school, and kind of regret it because I intentionally, just to be different, stayed out of the yearbook. So there's no picture of me in the yearbook.
That's too
And today I, see the error
bad.
of that. But anyway.
Yeah.
Any more high school stuff?
Well,
or-
and then at the end of high school, it was a real ego trip when the student body stood up and, gave me a standing so long that the principal said, all right, now let's just hold off and do one big one at the end of everyone's. Okay, folks?
So that's where that tradition started.
Standing ovations, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, the tradition of let's hold on and do one big thing at the end. So it was you.
Oh, yes, yeah, right, exactly, yeah. But then there's a big meeting between my parents, the high school counselor, representatives from State Services for the Blind, and the St. Paul School District that supplied people like the vision teacher, occupational therapist, mobility teacher, and to knock heads together, what are we going to, what's the next step for Jeff?
What's the direction?
We're talking post-high school now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they recommended, with, again, sort of low expectations, that I go into a VOTEC school, which there's nothing wrong with VOTEC, but it had nothing in there that would suit me in VOTEC. And I'll give you an example. In high school, there was a summer program sponsored by SSB, State Services for the Blind, that gave blind children a chance to, it was called the Work Experience Program. The first few weeks were doing some assessment stuff to determine your strengths, but it was all manual kind of assembly. And, I hated it. It was so tedious.
Sure.
I remember one story where I had they gave me a metal board with hundreds of little screw holes. And they said, Jeff, we want you to take these little teeny tiny screws and fill in all the screw holes. And I said, well, could we get the big picture? What is this? What is after that? Well, then we're going to have you unscrew them all. So
Sounds like the Army and digging holes.
Yes. I couldn't do that, so I started to screw in just enough screws to start spelling words of discontent about my situation. So when the teacher would come by,
good for you,
she'd say, how's it going, Jeff? And as I was finishing up the letter U of my 4-letter word, I said, oh, just fine. Good word. Keep it up, Jeff.
Yeah.
So that's my little, political comment. I just thought, I mean,
we laugh, but you stood up for yourself.
Yeah, you
yeah,
did.
yeah.
And your parents had...
It's not enough. It's not acceptable.
Oh, yes,
Your parents had higher demands.
Well, yeah, because, they set me up. They had a hard time finding what kind of work would fit this fellow here. And they put me in a cigar stand in the Minneapolis courthouse as an assistant cashier. And I remember this guy had, who was blind himself, had high expectations, right? So he said, Jeff, I want you to memorize the 130 slot rack where this Salem hard box goes here, Salem soft here, Salem filter, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So in just a couple of nights, I memorized that whole 130.
Wow.
And he was a World War II vet. Okay. So I never let him do his job. He'd say, oh, geez, I'm getting way behind because we were talking war stories.
Oh, I see what you mean. You were talking.
And then he loved to tell his war stories.
Was this in the late 60s, Jeff?
No, this was 70...
Mid-70s? Late?
Oh, okay.
373, yeah.
So early 70s.
Yeah, so, but like Scott was alluding to, my parents, who also had high expectations of me and my mom, I remember was saying things like, it'd be nice if you could be a psychologist because you just have a maturity and advice that you give me, because they had a very rough marriage, that I think would, fit very nice. And I wasn't interested in that, but, I appreciated her high expectations. And so they fought for me to go to college. And
so a new direction and a new focus.
Yeah, and state services, they convinced them. So they sponsored me, and the first step, they agreed to go to a 2-year college called Inver Hills.
Sure.
And
Inver Hills?
Yeah. And I had a really good time. It was a nice transition because it's kind of easier. It's a glorified, to an extent, glorified high school. I mean, it's not now. It's become such a larger program and well accredited and all that. But it was a nice transition because many of my Sibley High School buddies were there. And so a counselor, well intended, after I got my Associate of Arts, recommended I go to a school called Southwest State in Marshall, Minnesota.
Oh, sure.
And she said, oh, it's a wonderful school. It's a totally accessible school. And, well, she didn't know. Well, I said, okay, does it have a program in advertising copywriting? I want to be an ad man. And she said, well, Not exactly, but they have an interdisciplinary curriculum where you can make your own thing. Well, I got down there. The accessibility access meant nothing to me because I wasn't in a wheelchair.
Sure.
And I could not find any correct courses that I kept in fact, changed my major, 5 times in 1 year. And finally, State Services, who had an office down there, said, Jeff, this just isn't working. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. It's a waste of resources and your time. And maybe this was rationalizing it, but I thought to myself, wow, what a dedicated student I must be. They had to kick me out to make me leave. So I was at a very low ebb.
Yeah, I was
then back,
so at that point.
Yeah, back home and not really doing much. It was suggested by SSB I get into a remedial training program. And I had never heard that word. So one day I went back to Invert to say hi to my old teachers. And a different counselor said, how's it going, Jeff? And I told her about the remedial training program, and she said, oh my gosh, Jeff, I know you, and if I had been told that, I would have found it highly condescending and be insulted. And I was insulted, especially after she explained to me the meaning of the word remedial.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so while finishing that up, it wasn't all that long of a program. She same
made a
day.
recommendation, right?
Yeah, she saw so much more in you. It sounds like. Yeah.
So she said, Jeff, I know a friend. I'm just going to hoist myself up with my rabbit.
Oh, yeah.
With my rabbit cane.
Work that
here.
rabbit.
What I like about my rabbit cane is with every step, it's a hair-raising experience. So she said, I have a friend at the U of M in their department or their office of disabilities. I'd like you to meet with her. So I went home and told my mom, and I just mentioned my mom. I had a dad, but he was very preoccupied with business, and he had some, personality problems. So I could see that he really loved his kids, but my mom took more than her fair share of raising us. So I went home and told my mom about this, exciting news, and she said, You're kidding me. I met at the tennis club with a friend, or someone introduced me to someone who I had shared your frustrating story with, and they said that she knew a woman who worked at the Office of Disabilities at the U of M, and it was the same very woman. And, if that wasn't a sign from God.
Wow.
So I went down there. I met with them, with her. She arranged my classes so it wouldn't be too far from building to building, or she would put enough time between that. And I learned the campus with a mobility teacher.
Okay.
And I was the first blind. Well, I took the entrance exam, and I passed it, and eventually became the first blind the first blind graduate from the School of Journalism.
Wow.
And
congratulations.
Well, thank you. That's what the dean had told me. And I think I think I have a follow-up, but I'm forgetting. Could you remind me what I wanted to? I wrote some notes there.
Yeah.
The first.
No, I
after
think
the
once
U of
we
M?
get past the U of M, then we're going to go to
Friends? About Friends?
the ad agency.
Oh, yeah. And then I'm going to talk about my
your internship.
indispensable friends.
Yes.
Well, okay, so I had my 4-year degree, although it took me 10 years to get it, because I lounged around for 3 years in that period of not knowing where I was going. And so then the next step was I took a class at SSB to learn computer skills and learn job seeking skills like interviewing, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then created a portfolio of just freelance advertising pieces, and they were all volunteer things I did for my father's fitness center, or for a friend's brother who ran a floor covering company. You're covered at CLT. So anyway, and I took this portfolio to they had a great placement guy named Doug Tourville, and he arranged me to work at a Minneapolis ad agency on a non-paid position, but I didn't even think about that. Afterward, it was about 1 year, they said, well, we like your work, but you happen to live in the most competitive advertising market in our nation.
Oh, wow.
So
I wouldn't have realized that.
Oh, yeah. Most of the awards are Campbell, Methuen, Carmichael Lynch, BBDO, Phelan, McGilligan, those kind of companies. So the head of the creative department said, what we recommend to people like you who have, potential, I wrote some radio ads that were on the radio, is to go to a little town and work at like a radio station and work your way back. Well, right then and there, I dropped my future plans to be an advertising copywriter, because in a little town, I wouldn't have my resources, I wouldn't have my support team, because, again, the 3 critical areas that have propelled me were surrounding myself with encouragers, having that self-directed humor, and using my imagination for problem solving that kept me going. So anyway, that did not work out, and I was back at home living with my parents in their apartment, and it had what's the word? It had
sobering effect.
Yeah, and it had what's the word? It had declined. Whatever word I used, to a point where I was making 25 cents a call, telemarketing calls, and then I got a call from, again, State Services for the Blind, and they had gotten an invitation from Mayo Clinic, my old stomping grounds, for a blind student or blind,
Person.
A blind client to try out an internship in their collections agency that would turn into, if everything went like they had hoped, to a permanent job. So I moved to Rochester.
Sure. Yeah.
I lived, my dad, I wanted to live in an apartment, which I had for a summer with a friend from college who lived in Peru, and he couldn't afford to go back.
Okay.
So it was my first opportunity away from the house beside that summer works program.
Sure. Sure. This is a big deal.
Well, yeah. So I moved, and so he said, let's see what kind of deal I can work out with you living at the Ramada Inn, because you get all those free services,
Yeah.
changing bed sheets. I'm still working off the shampoo and soap supply in my bottom drawer from.
Well, feel free to leave some on my desk anyway.
Oh yeah, it's kind of a little bit petrified, but
Yeah.
but so.
I don't need much.
Oh, okay. Yes, I can tell. Oh, sorry. Anyway,
So the collection.
did
job.
you hear a peanut gallery just then? Yeah. Okay. So, anyway, so I went down there and learned mobility. By then, I was kind of just falling back on my friends. They always gave me what I needed at the time. So a friend oriented me to the buildings that I would be involved in, and and we learned that in one weekend. So I was set from that point of view. But the job itself was like that board of little screws. Mm-hmm. I'd call up somebody. It was just this pattern. You owe $10,000. What's that? You can pay 10 a week. Okay, very good. You owe 5,000. You can pay 15 a week. Okay. And what they didn't know, and maybe I'm sharing something I shouldn't, but Mayo is a non-profit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So a
lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, people don't know that they can, be real loose, fancy, free about their bills because they need to write off mail, things like that, losses, to maintain them as a nonprofit because they're fantastic down there. They could easily be a profitable organization. Say, I'm kind of...
You're slipping again?
Could you slide the pillow behind me a little more?
That way?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You had a supervisor down there, though, that kind of gave you
Oh, yeah.
an interesting...
Right. He was my immediate supervisor, and we'd be in our different carols.
Carols?
Those walls that are cloth.
Oh, sure.
So we'd schmooze, and, but, this tedium was so stressful, my body was shutting down. And no matter how early I went to bed, I could not stay awake. So he'd say, Jeff? And I'd say, yeah? He'd say, how come that you had that long gap right in the middle of your sentence? And I'd, say some excuse, but finally I told him, well, I fell asleep, I guess. And he said, you are so weird. I know that sometimes people listening can fall asleep to someone talking, but I never met someone talking who would fall asleep in mid-sentence. So I was there.
That's a magic trick.
Well, yeah, but I didn't like that kind of trick.
No, not at all.
That was more like my trick me.
Now, I don't know if you've gotten over that, Jeff, because I do remember some conversations on the phone with you where you're kind of going down a rabbit trail and then pretty soon you're gone. And I think you've fallen asleep.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a patient guy.
Yeah.
And I'm a good listener.
Yeah.
And I don't interject a lot, but you've fallen
Right.
asleep in
yeah.
a conversation
That's
before.
true. That's true. And it's nothing about you. I'm just a poor sleeper.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Mayo did not work out after a year. I came home, and this was in 91, so I listened to the Twins win the World Series down there.
There you go.
Oh.
Yeah.
In fact, they had a lottery for tickets, and I won 4 tickets to all the postseason games.
Wow.
But I never knew if these fellas down there liked me because I had these tickets, or if it was me.
Okay.
So anyway, but
Well, that in '91, if you had Twins playoff tickets, everybody wanted to be your friend.
oh yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, even people from St. Louis.
True.
So so that wasn't the answer. So back home again, living with my parents, and I got a call from what's now called St. Paul Vision Resources.
Oh, sure.
Then St. Paul Society for the Blind. And they said, Jeff, we would like you to speak to students about what it's like to be blind, elementary school, and maybe juniors, high school. And I said, oh, I can't do that. Sorry. My speech is so, is so disfluent.
But you did some of that,
Well,
right?
she said, okay, Jeff, keep in mind that we are volunteer drivers who take you to stores and social events. I don't know if we can keep doing that. And a little voice
Little
in
arm
me.
twisting.
Yeah, that's a little leverage.
Or a little voice in me. Blackmail.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So I said, okay. But then, I learned to hide behind magic.
Okay.
So I brought 2 or 3 little
Tricks.
with me
Yeah.
that I, very naturally and easily connected a message with what was happening. And I was giving them messages of when I, did those tricks about how we all have more in common with each other than the things that make us different, and that we may look different from one another on the outside, but the inside we look the same.
Sure.
Like I'd show a little stick with all different color stones, and then bam, they're all the same color. And that color was a chosen color by someone. So I did a lot of other things. I showed Braille. I wrote funny little Braille cards and had a contest. Whoever can figure out, what your Braille one-liner is will win a prize. So, they love that.
Brilliant.
And then I showed them, like, little devices I use, a Braille compass, and showed them how Abacus works. And then I had a recorder to simulate what a speech output computer would do. So I timed it out. Good afternoon, kids. And then there was a gap, and someone would say, hi. Would you like to hear a joke? And then they slowly caught up. Yeah. Why did the chicken cross the road? Or no, the playground.
Cross the playground?
To get to the other slide. And then this, robotic voice. Okay, you can laugh now. So those kind of were outlets for my creativity.
Yeah.
And I became more comfortable, and I showed them how the white cane works and all that.
Sounds like you were just put into your element.
That's where it started, yeah. Yeah, because I could ad-lib and just go with it. And
I love it.
So at so what do we talk about my friend?
Yeah, I think you you wanted to kind of finish up this episode. Again, our next episode will be really focusing on your professional life as the amazing Jeffo. But I know you wanted to really finish up this episode by talking about the importance of the friends you've made in your life.
Okay, and don't forget to talk about me as an astronaut.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. because I am way out there.
You're out there.
Far
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I am so blessed to have so many friends that have treated me just the way I need to be treated, which is telling me things that I need to know when I didn't want to hear that kind of stuff. And they really are like brothers. I mean, really, no insult to my 3 biological brothers, but they're more brothers to me than my siblings. So anyway, I'd like to just touch on 3 of them. Mark Racler was a student I met at Southwest State, and retrospectively, I realized that even though at the time I thought, what a waste of time going here, being kicked out of the school, because I had a chance to meet Mark, who was indispensable in my growth, in my personal and even professional growth. He once said to me, amazingly enlightened, he said, you tell me, Jeff, that stuttering is your worst disability, but it's the thing that you can do the most about. And that really struck me, to not give up, to not let it make me feel less than a person, So, and Mark lived in our dorm, and one day he saved my life, literally and figuratively in many ways. One time, Marshall, for those who may not know, is a flat farming area, and they never have winds below 20 miles per hour. So if they have a windy day, it's like 50, 60.
Sure.
And I weighed 88 pounds at the time.
Oh, boy.
And I walked from the dorm, which they set me up in the closest dorm to the academic complex. I was all, connected, and once you're inside, it's okay. Weather-wise, a big gust of wind just picked me up and threw me in a snowdrift, and no one was out that day because they had canceled classes. Wow. But I needed to eat, right, at the cafeteria.
Well, you couldn't stay in the snowdrift.
Well, no, so I'm laying there like this, just like the commercial. I've fallen and I can't get up.
Oh, my goodness.
And of all people, with no one out there, because it was 20 below zero with a wind chill because of the winds, about 90, below. And he comes out and he says, real smart alecky, what are you doing there? And I say, well, certainly not waiting for spring thaw. So he hoisted my sorry butt. Nothing personal, Scott.
No, I don't take it.
Okay. And so that's when we, started to get... And he evangelized me and introduced me to Jesus Christ that saved my unworthy soul. And later I thought, I think he evangelized me because he felt guilty for so many times threatening to punch me out if I didn't stop bugging him. and we meet today for Bible studies here and there. And was there one more comment about Mark?
No, I think you got it.
Now another key guy is sitting right here. Let's get a close up.
Okay.
Let's get a close up of this. Yeah. Scott, sorry. He brings the best out of me. He is just the kind of person that compliments who I am, and he's so generous, amazingly generous. He has put a lot of time into this whole podcast podcast for a lousy lunch.
You mean you're not going to pay me?
Yeah.
Roll.
Okay. And so we, as you know, we met at his church, and he has taken me to shows all over the country by plane or car.
Wow.
And he is a type A guy, kind of like me. So we've driven 17 hours straight, or he has, I should say, at a time, which I don't know is so advisable. But I kept yakking and keeping him awake, you know. So,
which is important when you're behind the wheel going 75 miles an
oh
hour.
yeah, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Right.
So so I had arranged for an accessible hotel room
Okay.
in Virginia, I think it was, and I didn't realize that they blew that off until I was undressed in the bathroom, ready, you know, for a shower. What I thought, so I yelled out, "Hey, Scott! I can't get my leg over this tall tub. You're going to have to come in here and give me a bear hug and hoist me over the side." And you know, Scott is still recovering from the shock to his system to this very day.
I have no follow-up questions.
Yeah, Scott.
And I do have a therapist appointment in about a half an hour.
Oh, the story is triggered something. Sorry. Okay. So he gets all sweaty and starts bear hugging random people. It's a weird post-trauma effect. So anyway, so Scott is always there for me. He reads the instructions of tricks. He helps me smooth them out. You know, he's just a wonderful guy, and he loves Devin. And Devin is, you know, has effects of a TBI, which is balance and you know, vision and low energy and all this. So she's reticent to meet with my friends because she has to reserve that for me, right?
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
but she doesn't mind Scott coming over if there's dirty dishes in the sink and that kind.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of that, I wanted to just jump back to Devin and I. When we met, you know, she had set the example as a caregiver for her mom, and I would become a caregiver, so I wouldn't be so self-centered as as always being the receiver of care. And so from that, after her TBI, I learned some skills, you know, doing dishes, putting them in the dishwasher or hand washing them. And it had fringe benefits to that too, because she would see me, Devin would see me with a fine sheen of sweat on me and tell me, boy, that really turns me on. My very own scullery boy.
Okay, talk about John.
Oh, yeah, and then John...
Again, no follow-up questions.
Yeah, right, no follow-up. Yeah. Can I plead the fifth in sort of after-the-fact way?
Yes, of course.
Okay, good. Thank God for editing. Okay.
Yes.
Now, John is what I call a visionary. Some call just a guy who is so impatient and unsettled, he jumps from one thing to another. But he's a bold guy, and again, a guy who puts me in my place when I need to be put in my place. So I met him at church, and he saw my show, and he said, your show, after he met me, he said, your show is very good, but I see your story as being more amazing, really. And so we got to know each other, and not much long after that, he said, I would like to assemble with you an organization for teaching, where we, because he was in a transition time of employment in his life, where we could create an organization for disability awareness, and we called it DATS, DATS, Disability Awareness Training Seminars. And I wrote Devin and I wrote a real nice threefold, whatever you call it, trifold.
Like a brochure?
Yeah, and I mailed it out all over the country, and we got calls, but he said, now, I'm going to come over, I'm going to introduce you to caffeine. I'm going to come over every morning at 6 a.m. What? Yep, and we're going to write speeches. And when I started giving speeches with John there, he would work the PowerPoint, etc., that Devin created. She's a teacher, right?
Right.
They didn't go so well because it was such an exposure. I was so transparent. I had to be transparent because I could not hide behind my magic tricks. Mm-hmm. So that put me in this way outside my comfort zone, and parts of the speeches were okay, but realistically, generally, they fell flat because I didn't have a chance to tell stories. I was trying to be the expert on disability and cite all these third-party statistics, Snoresville. And so, like the 8th grade kids, the lesson I learned from the 8th grade kids at Lindsay, which was not to try to be someone that you were not meant to be.
Right.
That's what I was trying to do in this new role. Okay. But that's not me. I'm like, Mr. ADD, which I have, but I haven't been treated for that by my choice because it would dampen my creativity. Mm-hmm. And just wild sort of, here's an idea. I got one. But
that catapulted you into not doing as much of the speeches, but writing.
Well, so then John said, okay, and the speeches were getting better because, by trial and error.
Right.
Sure.
But still, when I would be invited out to shows around the country, things really started popping, and I'll talk about that a little later. But he said, you need a book to have creds. And he was a professor English speech, so he was like the guy I needed.
Sure.
So I took his advice, and we had all this material from speeches that we incorporated into rough chapters of a book that I filled in after he gave me a kickstart to teach me how to write more actively with using verbs and all this. And so it took 1 year to write the book. It's called Seeing Light in the Darkness, and the subtitle is A Story of Surviving Affliction with Laughter and Grace.
Okay. And
maybe you can show a picture of it on the screen now. It has me driving a sports car with a 20-foot white cane out the window, and my helper dog in the passenger seat, and I'm zooming right along. But safety always comes first for me. So for every increase of 5 miles per hour, I just add 2 feet of white cane. So that's the first book. And,
yeah, go ahead.
well, and then that led into the other 2 books, and we'll show the picture of those again later, and I can talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, that would be great, and we're gonna really dive into that in our next episode, where we're gonna really focus on the amazing, no pun intended, career that you've had as both an author, a speaker, an entertainer, a magician,
a musician,
and just an influencer of inspiration is the word I'm looking for, to others. And I know we're going to talk more about it in our next episode, but just for the audience today, tell us how many shows you've performed, because it's a huge number.
Well, let me just quickly lead into that with a kind of a little bit closure with my friends. Without my friends, I could have never, been the first graduate, as I mentioned, from the School of Journalists, the first blind advertising copywriter, the first blind magician with multiple disabilities, able to build a house, totally accessible, and able to leap tall buildings at a single wait, that's somebody else. Sorry.
Yes.
I got a little carried away, folks.
How many shows have you done?
Okay, well, again, thanks to these friends, I in a 29-year career, I did a little over 4,000 shows in 16 states.
Wow.
Yeah.
Most of them were here in the Midwest, naturally,
sure.
But it was a great opportunity. I could really never have grasped when I was that 7-year-old boy reading about the little blind boy from India who was a magician. It's just it's really a God thing. And I was just hanging on tight, letting him steer and helping me not to try to figure out the whole thing myself.
Well, I really appreciate you coming in here today, Jeff, and telling us these stories, about your life. And I like you, I would not be where I am today without my friends. And I've always said we don't do this, we don't go through this world alone. We need each other. And you have had so many amazing people in your life, and I'm sure if they were here, well, I know Scott's here, so he can tell us, but they'd probably say the same about you. That you've been a key part of their life's journey and success, and you illustrate it so eloquently, the power of friendship. And thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I appreciate the opportunity, because I am an extrovert, and Devin just loves me to get out and have these opportunities because she's an introvert.
That's right.
And
go, Jeff,
needs
go.
a little, we don't have any children, but we've always had dogs because they don't talk. And talk.
Sure.
And talk.
Sure. What are your dogs' names?
Well, it started with Crypto. He's on the cover of the first book, and Devin complained. She said, "I'm looking at your drafts here of your autobiography, and Crypto has more stuff about him than you have about me." So, a happy life is a happy wife. So, but Crypto was truly an amazing dog. He was so much in sync with me. He knew right away to be gentle. When I was in a walker so many times, he would ever so slowly walk right inside the walker with me and take these slow motion steps with me, just to let me know I'm here for you, Dad.
Yeah. Dogs can feel so much energy.
Yeah.
So intuitive.
And then we had another dog, Lacey. These are all rescues.
Yeah.
And then we had a third. The dog we have now is Ellie Mae. And she's been our most challenging because she's got anxiety things.
Sure.
So we always got to try to calm her down. But she knows she's in the right place after being with like 4 people in 5 years, because Devin peeked out of the bathroom this morning, and she's just rolling around in our bed, just having so much fun.
Yeah, she's happy and feels loved and safe.
Right.
Yeah,
safe.
yeah, she found her people. Yeah, I love it. Well, shout out to Devin and your dogs, and Scott. Thank you also for coming in today and being a part of this ride. And
he's a real dog too.
To the next chapter.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, would you say Scott's a real dog?
Scott's a real dog too.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a real dog?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I can take that lots of ways, Scott.
That's right.
Yeah, well,
I'm not going into it, I guess.
Well.
Again, no follow-up questions.
Yeah, Your Honor. Yeah.
Anyway,
thank you. Well, I look forward to our next session in this never-ending tale of laughter and tears.
Yeah, well, that's very well said. I mean, you have such a great life story, and it's far from being finished.
Oh, thank you.
So, all right. Well, I'm just gonna thank you again, and as the audience out there knows, I always like to close out these episodes with reminding everyone out there that if you believe it, you can achieve it.